Hello and welcome to the Above Board podcast from Fathom Analytics. As always, I am Paul Jarvis, and I am joined, as always, by my co-founder, Jack Ellis.
What are we talking about today? What's going on?
I think we're going to talk about our perfect day.
All right, then. Let's start off. What's your perfect day?
I think my perfect day is not being interrupted. I think, that sounds kind of mean or curmudgeon-y, but I do honestly think that the more I have time to myself to focus on work, the more I can get done, the more enjoyable it is, the more I can kind of just like get into that flow state and just create. And even thinking about it, like before we had Ash on support, right? Like I couldn't do that because there was always something in support. And you and I, this week, Ash is away and you and I are doing support, and that's fine. But it is hard to be thinking, oh, there's support because there's always support tickets. It's hard to think like, oh, well, there's stuff in the support queue, but I could be doing this. So last week I wrote a couple articles because I was like, I want to get a bunch of stuff done when I can just like focus on things and then get to work. But I guess other aspects of perfect. So I think being able to focus and have uninterrupted time is a huge one. Not working for a lot of the day as well is important. Like I like to get outside in the morning, do a bit of hot and cold, like go between the hot tub and the cold plunge, which is now that it's getting cooler outside, the cold plunge is getting colder. So it's getting a bit harder, but it's fine because it's like trying to adapt to even colder temperatures.
Nice.
I like to take break for lunch, usually about an hour, because I like to prepare my food from scratch and then get back to work. I think also perfect day is waking up naturally and early and getting the bulk of my work done, at least the like harder work done in the morning. And then the afternoon, if I do work, is more like little admin stuff or businessy stuff, or that's like things that need to be done but don't require a ton of attention. And then relaxing for the rest of the day, chilling out outside, usually getting some. I mean, it depends too, right? Like summer is pretty much over here, which kind of sucks. But in the afternoons in the summer, I like to sit outside in the sun for about an hour after lunch and just like veg out, get vitamin D and that. But I think that's it. I think eating some good food, doing a bunch of work, relaxing. Yeah, how about you?
It's funny you say about the cold plunge, because we spoke for 40 minutes before we hit record, which is not normal. I suppose we haven't spoken in a little while. You sound like you sounded like you have more energy. So it's like I don't know. We know cold plunges. I mean, they change you slowly but surely. So it's funny. It's funny that you're doing those. I'm going to poke into your perfect day a little bit then. So that all sounds good at a high level.
Sure.
How do you avoid things like Parkinson's law, where you say, for the listener who hasn't heard of that law, you say, oh, I've got 8 hours straight here. How do you decide how much work you're going to fit in that time? I know that you do the deep work in the mornings, but how do you plan that? Do you just have this continuous flow of things to do? Do you intentionally craft out what you're going to work on? Or do you just switch on a kind of work button and you just work on everything? What's your system for getting stuff done and deciding what to work on?
Yeah, so I guess I decide on what to work on. I don't decide on so I decide on like what's the thing I need to work on right now. So I have if things need to be done in the future, I'll write them down on my list, but I try not to focus on them unless I'm working on them. So like if I'm designing, say for example, hypothetically, I'm redesigning our application, right? So if that was the case, hypothetically, then I would say, okay, what's the page I need to design today? And then I would just work on that till it's done. If it takes 2 days, then I would get up the next day and that would be the thing I'd be working on. And then when that finishes, I would look at my list and say, okay, well, what's the next thing to do? So I try to do things as much as possible in order. And I know that as well, like if I have, say, 8 hours a day to work, I probably only have 3 or 4 hours a day to work, like focus, deep work, because things are going to come up in support. Things like you're going to have a question, or our other developers going to have a question, or somebody's going to email and who wants to do an interview, or somebody's like, there's always going to be things that come up. So I always assume that half my time at best, I can work on focus stuff. And the other half my time is just, we're operators of a business, and the business, running the business, is probably going to take half the time at least. So that's kind of how I parse it out.
How intense are you working though? When something's going wrong, we put out fires in the past and we're thinking and we're discussing and we're planning. How intense are you working as you go through your day? Are you typing rapidly? Are you, got a joint on the side? I'm joking for the listener. Paul doesn't smoke weed, but that's the kind of they're
It's
trying to.
perfectly legal here.
It's legal, but I'm trying to illustrate extremes, right? Are you like chilled out, just like, hey man, let's try this, just try this square over here, or are you going? I can actually do my typing. How are you doing things?
Yeah. So, I mean, if I'm focused on a thing, I am absolute laser focus. Like, I don't have social media. I don't have my email open unless I'm doing emails. I close Signal. Like if I'm working on a thing, I don't have, like, that's the only thing I'm doing. And like if my wife tries to interrupt me, I'm like, nope.
For how long?
I'm usually I could usually do a couple hours of that at a time. And then I'll take it, like, once I've done that, I'll take a break. And I tend to know when I need to take a break. Like if my back is getting kind of sore, I'll like do stretching, or like get on, like I have an exercise bike right beside my desk. Like I'll go do, or I'll like go make food, or go sit outside, or like go in the hot tub cold plunge. Like I'll, I'll work until I basically, my body tells me like, hey, like chump, stop for a little bit. But sometimes that flow state is like 4 hours. And I'm like, I don't give a shit. Like if my body or my brain aren't complaining, I'll just keep going, because my body and brain tend to tell me when they've had enough or need a break. So I try to listen to that. And then, but if I am working on something intensely, then like that's it. Like I don't have notifications for anything other than like calendar events, and that just, if there's a calendar event, that means I need to go do something at a certain time, so I need those things, right? So like everything is basically off if I'm working, other than the work that I'm doing.
Okay, so that's very interesting. Your body tells you when you've had enough, and you're listening to those signals. This morning I sat down for work, and I have this infinite energy. And I've been off for a good chunk of time, as you know, and checking in and maybe kind of conducting, if you want to use the word conducting, some things and keeping things in motion, and for some projects we've got. But I haven't worked, and I suddenly feel like I have. So, for example, one of the big infrastructure projects we're doing, we were talking about it, and for the longest time, I've been feeling like, oh, this is going to be such a grind, because we've just done a huge migration. Keep in mind, and it's like, this is going to be so much work. And this morning, I just felt like it's going to be some work, but I don't really care. This will get done. I felt very at peace with the idea of this big piece of work, and I had this wonder of, was I a bit burned out? Because we've been going hard, and when putting out fires obviously is an exhausting thing, but we've been doing lots. And I had this wave of, oh, maybe I was a bit burned out, and I just think, I don't know if I necessarily have this awareness of my body, because it's funny, when I'm enjoying stuff, I don't stop. But then how do you know when to stop? You stop when your back starts to ache. Do you start making mistakes? Do you start getting blocks? Like, what are your signals to know when to take a break? And do you have any kind of formula for us programmers who perhaps are too young to have learned all of this or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say I do think age is a factor. Like in my 20s and early 30s, I would sometimes sit down and like get up and like 8 hours had passed, and then I'd like get up and pee, and then I would sit back down for another 8 hours, and like my day sometimes was just like 16 hours of work. But I can't do, like I very much can't do that now. So part of it, yeah, my body starts to like my wrists will hurt or my back will hurt a little bit, or like I'll be shifting in the chair a lot. I think I guess if I can't focus anymore, then I try to pay attention to that, right? Like it could be my brain just isn't working as well as it was like 15 minutes ago. Or like my brain, like I start daydreaming, or I start wandering, or I start listening more to the music than like the thing that I'm like coding or designing or writing, kind of thing. So I think if I start to pay attention for where I'm starting to lose my attention and focus, then it's like, okay, well, if I can't do this as well as I could 50 minutes ago, then why don't I just like stop for a bit? And this is like, it's not perfect. Like it doesn't always happen, but in a perfect setting, then I can pay attention to that. It doesn't always happen, obviously, but when it does, it's good.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. I find that I often won't want to do a task, and I will just have to force myself through the initial bit. You talk about working 16 hours. So it's funny to think about. So I couldn't do that unless it was a certain thing, unless it was something I was super hyped about. Say, for example, like, I don't know, we're redoing the payment mechanics, right? That, with the address going to Stripe and stuff. Um, my that isn't exciting for me, and so the only way I actually would get through that easier if I say to myself, "Hey, you've got 1 hour to do this. Go." And then the goal was to do it as fast and as complete as possible, but basically set myself an artificial deadline. If I said, "Hey, you've got 16 hours and you've got this Stripe address and you've got this," just boring things. In the grand scheme of things, like, it's not fun, innovative stuff. It's just stuff that needs to be done. I find that I'm more motivated and faster when I set a limit. So I just wonder how you could sit there for 16 hours. That just blows my. I mean, I guess I could on some things, but you were doing client work, and that can't have been that fun. I mean, was it? Because it is a dopamine thing. I mean, dopamine's involved in a lot of it. How would you sit there for 16 hours? I mean, I'd be bored.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is just that like I don't start working when I'm motivated. I start working and then I find that I get motivated once I get into it, because then sometimes it's just like, fuck, I'm motivated because I want to fucking finish this thing. And that motivate. But like I just sit down to work when it's time to work, and I don't care if I'm motivated or not. And then I find I either get motivated, or I just kind of slog through it and kind of get it done. I think I wrote probably 3 books ago I wrote about this, but I don't memories shit, so I don't remember what I wrote about it. But it was probably something very profound. I just don't remember.
Okay, yeah, I'm sure it was so profound and groundbreaking, and yeah. Well, hopefully it still exists. I mean, it's got to be. We preserved the very best or the most popular articles got preserved on the Fathom website. Use fathom.com/pgrvs, I believe, but you did delete a lot of articles too, when you suicided your brand.
Exactly.
That's interesting. Okay, cool. So I do agree that once you start achieving things and you start moving through things, you can even consciously say, "Whoa, look at me going! I'm actually getting stuff done." And in that moment, that can then play into this. If you're going down a hill or going up a hill or however you do it, that plays into the momentum. And momentum itself is motivating, and then you get that dopamine reward, and then you're getting these little things done, you're getting some wins, and that I could see how that would turn into a longer session. So then, okay, how do you typically feel? You're sitting down for work, right? You've got hypothetically you're redesigning some stuff. You've sat down. Are you completely indifferent to how you feel? Are you completely indifferent to is it just a case of I'm here to do the work? I don't necessarily feel anything. I don't necessarily feel motivated. I don't feel anything. I know that I'm going to do this work. And then once you start it, you get hooked into it. And then where does the dopamine come from? It comes from getting the stuff done. Are you thinking about the future? Are you thinking about the big picture? Like, what's in your brain as you work through things? And the reason I'm poking you on this is because you are one of the most productive people in the world. You get shit done, and you get shit done on time. And people listening, I think they know that at this point. You're much better at it than me, so that's why I'm poking you. Like, what's your system? What are you feeling? What's your psychology?
Yeah, it's that I don't care unless there's something like if I'm sick or if I'm like I just don't have the brain power to work. Then like we're lucky that we have a job where we just can take a break and can do that. But like day to day, yeah, I mean, I don't think about I don't wake up and think about how motivated I am or like if I feel like I need to do something. I just wake up and start doing it. Like I don't let myself, and I mean that. So that's also why I do like a workout stretching routine as soon as I get up, because I don't want to think about it. Because if I think about it, I'm going to fucking talk myself out of it and not do it. Which is why, like, when I used to try to work out in the afternoon, it just like 50% of the time I would probably just not do it. But if I get up and I come into my office and I just do my workout routine because that's my schedule, then I think in the last 6 months, I've probably not done, and it's only like a 10-minute, it's not like anything crazy. Like I'm not lifting weights in the gym for like 3 hours or anything, but it's probably like 10 minutes of stretching and exercise. But like I probably missed that 3 times in the last 6 months because I don't give myself time to think about it or talk myself out of it. And it's the same with work. Like if I don't think about being motivated to do it, I just like, okay, it's work time, so I'm going to sit down and I'm going to work. And like before I give myself time to think about whether I want to do it or not, I'm already working and I'm already like, oh, I can cross this off my to-do list. Like even if this was a shitty task, like I just fucking did it. So now I can like move on to the next thing, and that might be more fun or that might be less fun, but then I'll finish it and then I'll get on to the next thing. And then when I do enough of those things, I'm like, okay, well that feels good. Like yesterday, I think I worked from 5 a.m. until about 12:30. And then I was like, at 12:30, I was like, well, this is good. Like I've done enough. And then I think oh no, I did work a little bit. I think I got home at around 5 o'clock and I did like 30 minutes of support, but I gave myself a time limit because I was hungry. So I was like, I kind of want to eat dinner. So I'm just going to do like 30 minutes of emails and then stop and then get food and then watch football.
Okay, so you're very system based. You don't allow any emotion to come into play, and the motivation for the task. You have high level motivations. Like you care about running a successful business. This is prior to Fathom as well. You care about that, and this is I guess a non in the moment feeling of motivation. This is like a higher level, a deeper level of motivation that you know there's going to be ups and downs, and you know you're not going to feel like doing this. Like when someone says they want to get fit, it's not, you don't, every day you don't feel like you're going to train. I mean, I remember this when I used to train religiously. I don't feel like training, but my value I have in my life is that I'm going to do this. So you have a higher level systemic approach to work, and I suppose for other things as well, obviously in your life, like Whole Foods and everything. These are values, but with regards to work, that is how you approach it. So it doesn't matter what you're thinking. All right, then. So I mean, do you have, I mean, you surely have had days where things go completely off the rails because you have got in your head or your psychology isn't good. I mean, I know you enough. I'm gonna guess that when you go off the rails, it's when people are just being dicks, and like things are just, people are being incompetent. This is outside of Fathom. This is stupid stuff, like people breaking things or whatever. That's my guess for you. I mean, when do you have shit days?
Yeah, like when things go wrong that is out of our control, it definitely sets me off because one of my core values is I want to do well for the people who are giving it. Like I want to do well for our customers. Like working for yourself is fucking hard. I like it more than I would like to work for somebody else. So I want to do everything in my power to continue to work for myself. And I've like grown accustomed to the life that I have. Like it's definitely not an excess, but like I'm pretty fucking comfortable. Right? So like I'm motivated to keep that going, to be able to, yeah, like you said, to be able to eat like all organic whole foods. Like that can get expensive, but that's a value that I have. Investing in health and well-being. Like it's funny, like between my wife and I, we have almost as much stuff as a lot of like physical therapy offices, as far as like healing and bringing our bodies back to wellness. But like that's important to us, right? Like my wife's an athlete, like I'm not an athlete, but I want to take care of myself. And so like those kind of things, definitely. But like, yeah, as far as like, I don't, yeah, it's not all perfect days. I mean, sometimes I'm frustrated because like I want to move faster than we're moving. So we're a small company and we just can't move fast. Right. Like I want to, like all of the things we have in our pipeline stress me out that we haven't released them yet, because I know our customers would love it. But if I get into my head too much about that, then yeah, it definitely throws a wrench in things. But I also know, when I think about it, like we are getting to those things are happening. It just takes time. And so, yeah, but I do get in my head about that for sure sometimes.
For the perfect day, it's almost as if it has to be completely unemotional. It has to be systemized. Is what I'm taking away from this. You know, because I mean, I feel you. You know, there's times. Well, you have to be emotional with things. You have to feel things sometimes, and you have to. You know, when you're strategizing, you have to have some be emotionally in tune with customers and things like that. But in terms of the actual execution, it's almost as if emotion doesn't belong there. Or when I say emotion, I mean tuning into your feelings. You've got a goal, you have to execute it, and it's really doing it as quick as you can if you want, or going at whatever pace you want. There's no real hack to it. It's just that's the perfect day. Perfect day is waking up, sitting down, doing what you know you should do, regardless of how much it hurts. And that's it. Not even having an opinion about whether it's fun or anything, just doing the work. That's your perfect
Yeah,
day.
I mean, it definitely seems pretty dispassionate, which I guess, yeah, like you said, it's a balance, because like you and I are both
At
yeah,
execution
yeah,
level.
execution level. Because you and I are both ridiculously passionate about our business and about our company, right? So I think there's some days when you and I just like talk and strategize all day and we're passionate about it. And that's also fun. Like that's also fun. Like I also enjoy that time, right? Like I like that you and I can be like super passionate and emotional about the work that we do and the company that we have, because it's fucking awesome. But as far as executing like the operations of work, yeah, I try to like we have the emotional burst of like, oh, this is what I think would be good. No, this is what I think would be good. Or like, this is what's best for our customer. Like this feature should go above this feature. Like this is how this thing should work. And like we kind of hash it out, and that kind of stuff is fun. But then when it comes down to actually building those things, I'm like, okay, we had that emotion about the thing, and I understand that, and I've internalized that, and now I can take that and just be like, okay, now that based on that strategy or those ideas we had or those feelings we had, this is how it's executed. Okay, so now how do I execute it? And then it becomes dispassionate from there, which I'm sure armchair psychologists can like dive into that and like relate it to how I feel about my mother or something. But like that's, I guess, how it works.
Yeah, when you're in the trenches, not to try and relate this to war in any way, or try and minimize war down to what business is, but yeah, when you're in the trenches, you can't. It's not the time to be emotional. You've got to execute. You've got to execute the battle plan. It's not the time to think about whether you feel motivated or whether this is the fun thing to do, or even forget that for a minute. But even to get in your head about how this fits into the big picture, that thinking has to be done outside of the execution zone.
But you can also be pulled out of the execution zone to reconsider those things, right? Like I think that's kind of like, if you think about the way that I work, that makes sense, because a lot of times like you and I'll hash out an idea, and then I'll take it and I'll go away and be silent for a while, and I'll just build the thing from start to finish as far as like design and UI and UX goes. And then we'll take it and be like, okay, this works, this doesn't work, this works, this doesn't work. And then we tweak and we fix. But typically it's, here's the idea. I'll go off and I'll design the whole thing from start to finish. And then we'll go back and like, okay, well, no, this doesn't actually work. Like this can actually be a whole lot better, or this flow can be a whole lot better, or the words on this don't make sense. And then we'll kind of dive back into the passion of like arguing through what the best solution is. But that's after I've gone off and like built the thing and designed the thing, kind of, I guess. That seems to be how it works with us.
Yeah, I'm still a bit hung up on the approach to work. I have two modes, and I fall into a trap. I know I do. When I'm working sometimes, I'll get into this crazy trance and this crazy flow, and I will just produce insane amounts of work. And it's happened infrequently, but I always feel like I'm chasing that. Do you know what I mean? Like I feel like I'm chasing that, and if I'm not getting that, then I feel like I'm doing something wrong. And so the reason that I'm poking you so much is because I'm trying to learn. Because I think, oh, I'm not feeling this groove. Oh, something must be wrong. Like maybe my system's wrong. Maybe I'm focusing on the wrong thing. And I get in my head a lot, and I think I'm too emotionally involved in the work, and it's because I think I have a high standard for my execution. When in actuality, I need to be aiming lower, and I need to be saying like, no, dude, just you feel like that, like you feel like this is not what it should be. It doesn't matter. Like, execution is execution. Execution exists whether you are feeling good about it or not. And when I say feeling good about it, I mean feeling like you're on fire today. Everything's aligned. You're like ready to step in the ring. Blah blah blah. Doesn't matter. Execution is execution, especially when we're talking about programming. There's lots of little things that can be done. And I think what you said about how you get into that flow, and then we talked about how it feeds into that. Maybe that has to happen. But I find it strange that sometimes I would just open up my computer and I would just be raring to go and I'll be just on fire. And other days I'm just not that. And I always have questioned that, I guess, and I always get stuff done in the end, but I just wonder if I rely too much on the emotional state, even though I know I shouldn't. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I guess one caveat to that as well is it doesn't always work out. Like I can be in the flow state and doing work, and that work could end up being shit. Like I could, like when I was doing client work, I could be sitting there and be like able to work, and my design could just be shit. But what I typically do is I just keep going with it. Like I'll design something and it'll be shit, and then I'm like, okay, but I this looks like a fucking piece of ass, but what have I learned from this? And then I'll iterate, and then I'll go back and I'll redesign it again. Even with like anytime I do interface work for Fathom, right? Like I'll design something, I'll be like, this is kind of garbage. But I'm like, okay, well, but it's done. And so now I can go back and I can design it again. And if I do it a second time, it might get a bit better. Even with code, like, so I do this with code as well. I mean, obviously it's different because of CSS and HTML, but like I typically don't know how to, because I'm not that good of a programmer. I don't know how to do the best code until I've written the code shitty first. And maybe this comes back to like my background being a writer. Like I don't care if my first draft is shit because it's the first draft and it's supposed to be shit. So I'll write it out because I want to get everything out. I want to get it all down because then I can take that and then I can make it good later. Like I don't care that it's not good now because I know that I have the ability to make it good later. So sometimes it can be a perfect day. I can be in flow state, all that shit, but the work product will be garbage. But then I can take that and I can learn from that and I can, okay, I can iterate on this. I can just make it better. Like whenever I'm doing code for Fathom's application, especially if it's for something new, you and the development team see probably version 3 or 4 every time. Like you're not seeing the first crack that I have at it. You're seeing like the 4th crack that I have at it, because that's when I've been able to take it and make it better than it was when I started. But I did the work to start, but it wasn't good. So then I take that and I'm like, okay, well, I'll make it better. And the second time I'll make it a bit better. And the third time I'll maybe focus on like efficiency and like, oh, well, this like 300 lines of CSS could be like 160. And then I'll try it again. I'm like, oh, I got it down to like 120. And oh, it looks better now too because it's more consistent because I use less code or something like that. And everybody's like, well, I just use fucking Tailwind. Shut up.
Oh man, I mean, yeah, Tailwind is pretty good, but know what you like, right? And that's part of your system.
Of
Interesting. All right, dude. I'm going to call the episode here. I think I know it's basically me interviewing you. It could be even this episode could be titled "Paul's Perfect Day" because my brain's already gone off thinking, and I'm not going to be able to focus on anything else. I'm like thinking about what you said and taking it in. So, thank you for letting me interview you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks everybody for listening to Jack interview me. Smash that like button. I don't think there are like buttons on podcasts.